Welcome to this video, all about Paper 2 Question 4. This is AQA's GCSE in English Language, and students might already be aware that for this question you have to look at two extracts in order to compare the writer's perspectives or attitudes. Unlike other videos where I have used whole extracts, as will be the case in the exam, in this video, the focus is using shorter texts in order to practice what students need to include in their answer. In my experience, this tends to be the trickiest of the paper 2 questions. In my experience, students find this one harder than, for example, the writing question. And of course, when you look at the marks for this question, it's 16, so it's the highest marks for the reading section for paper 2. Because students are being assessed on multiple things, really. They're being assessed on their ability to compare, they're being assessed on their ability to quote evidence, to use terminology, to do with methods, and also to do what the question wants you to do, which is to talk about writers' perspectives and their opinions. So there's lots going on for this question, which is why you've got longer, 20 minutes or so. So just a general reminder, you've got two writers because you're working with two extracts, and those extracts will be across 2 centuries. So one of those extracts will always be 19th century, Victorian. And a reminder that despite those extracts being often centuries apart, they will be about the same topic or the same theme. You're comparing what each writer thinks and feels, remember, and you're using the methods, the writer's methods, to reinforce what their attitudes are. So even though this is not a language question, one of the bullet points underneath the task reminds you to talk about methods which can be language or words or sentence forms, sentence types, and so on. And you're quoting evidence from the texts because it's a reading question. So that is the generic kind of summary of this question. As I have used in previous videos, because this question is worth quite a few marks, and because there's quite a bit to do, I always encourage my students to go through this cycle of 5 steps in order to get the information that they need, and certainly information that they need to include in their answer. So before you do anything, of course, you've got to read both extracts, you've then got to find quotes, you've then got to find methods, you've then got to try and label with some adjectives what those writers feel, and you've then got to elaborate on why you think they feel this way, or why they have this opinion, or why they have this perspective. So you almost have to put yourself in the shoes of these writers. For step 4 there, the feelings words, again, I've already done a video with this. So we have here a list of adjectives to describe how somebody might be feeling positive, and likewise for negative. This is essentially what you are comparing for this question. You are comparing the attitudes of the writer, and these words tell you the attitude. So you need to be going into that exam knowing some of these words to be prepared to perhaps use them. And that will form the basis of your comparison. So the focus of this video is on short text. So I'm going to look at 2 separate questions in this video. This one is all about comparing the writer's different attitudes about their English lessons. And we have Lisa Jones and Arnold Bennett, and you can see in that grey box there, it tells you who they are. And this is the kind of information that the examiner might include for you in the box at the top of the extract, where they give you a little bit of context to help you understand where it was published, when it was published, who is the writer, etc. So always use those contextual boxes to help think about how who they are gives them a particular attitude. So Lisa Jones, who is a student at a college studying hair and beauty, says, "It is undeniable that English is dull, boring and torturous to study. We study texts which are not relevant to me, and a lot of the questions are totally irrelevant to my chosen career. Lessons tend to be boring and long. Similes, metaphors and personification will haunt me forever like ghosts. What is the point of all this? Isn't there other things that we could do to fill our time? I'm sure you'd agree there is. So that's her view about English lessons. Let's contrast that with Arnold Bennett's view, and Arnold has been an English teacher for 20 years. And he says, nothing fills me with such passion and enjoyment as studying our beloved language and its literature. It's a total joy to see students engaged and learning about the power of words and stories. You can see their imagination flourishing and soaring into the sky like a dragon. I have seen whole classes swept away in a fever. In those days there were heroes, there were dinosaurs, astronauts, soldiers, and giant apes. So that's what he says. So what we need to do now is we need to think about, well, what would we quote, because we obviously can't copy it all. Where are the methods? What are their attitudes? And then think about why they perhaps have these views. So here we have in the different colours some of the methods, and as I was reading those extracts, these methods might have jumped out at you. So we have list of threes or triplets, we have rhetorical questions, we have direct address, we have similes, we have lists, we have a metaphor and some adjectives or nouns as well, passion and enjoyment, abstract nouns there. So we have a selection of quotes, a selection of methods which you could use in your answer. So the methods have to be there. So if you are talking about their attitudes, of course, Lisa Jones has a negative attitude and Arnold has a positive one. So if we go back to our table, we might say that, you know, she has a disgusted, outraged and annoyed attitude about her English lessons, whereas the writer of source B has a delighted, approving and ecstatic attitude, whatever one of those you want to use. So we're beginning to label why they have the views that they do and what those views would be labelled as. So if I was to show you an example, and again this would not be perhaps the whole answer, but it gives you an idea of how to write this answer. We've got here the evidence in purple, the methods in green, and the attitude words in red. And in black, all around that, is the elaboration. Step 5, why do they have this view? And in order to do that, you need to think about, well, who are they? What experiences have they been through? And why might their life choices or decisions encourage the view that they do? So the writer here says, the student here says, the writers express completely different attitudes towards English. In source A, Jones uses a list of 3, dull, boring and torturous, to describe her English lessons, as well as 2 rhetorical questions. What is the point of all this? Isn't there other things that we could do to fill our time? To reinforce her critical, unimpressed and judgmental attitude. This could be because she doesn't see the relevance of studying English when she wanted to study hair and beauty at college, so she's probably unclear about the importance of communication skills to her career. Again, that's not a whole answer. I would want to say more about that in the exam. But for the purposes of this video, let's just keep it shorter. So now we cross over to source B. However, Bennett has a passionate, enthusiastic and optimistic perspective about English. For example, he uses a list, heroes, giant apes, to emphasise how books offer students the chance to read a variety of different texts which stimulate their imaginations. From his perspective as an English teacher, he has probably been inspired by the students he has taught and noticed how literature and literacy can change lives. So you start to see, even with these shorter texts, how all of these skills begin to fit together to write your comparison of what these 2 writers think or feel. In an exam, I mean, if you can write this in the exam, that's, you know, it'd be fine, I think, to get half marks at least, which is what you need to get a grade for. But if you wanted to get higher, then I think you would have to elaborate a bit more on why they have the views that they do. Okay, so that is one example. The second question we're looking at in this video is all about people staying in hotels, which is very kind of TripAdvisor inspired. So exactly the same as before, we have 2 writers, Gary and Natalie, and we also get told who they are. So one's a builder and one's a domestic cleaner and also a mother of 3. So after staying in a hotel, Gary Duffy says, "I recently stayed in the hotel and Dave, the manager, really did us proud. The wedding reception was excellent and the food was excellent. Dave runs a tight ship. The rooms were clean, tidy and spacious. All of the staff were amazing and really made our stay great. We felt at home. Please bear in mind this hotel dates back to the 1700s and it's not all polished chrome and clean lines, but I feel this adds to its charm." That is compared to Natalie Lodge, who says, "My paperwork clearly said breakfast was included in my stay, but I had to pay an extra £10. The hotel looked like a war zone, barely clean, a small TV, curtains with holes in them, mould in the bathroom and spiders lurking in the corners, a very noisy shower that sounded like gunfire and 1,000 machine guns sputtering, threadbare towels. I advise you to stay elsewhere, do not stay here." So remember, the focus of this video is using short extracts to practice. So already you can probably guess what their attitudes are. Gary has a very negative attitude. Gary has a very positive attitude. He's very complimentary. He likes staying there, and he felt at home, as he says. But Natalie has the negative attitude. She is critical. She's judgmental. She is quite outraged, actually, I think, as well, about her experiences. So in terms of methods, again, we've got the repetition of excellent, we've got a list of 3, we've got a metaphor, Dave runs a tight ship, meaning that everything was kind of organised and tidy. We've got a short declarative sentence, we felt at home there, compared to a list in Natalie's extract with a couple of similes, and an imperative at the end, do not stay here, which is giving a very short instruction. So the methods are there even in a very short amount of text. So lastly then, let's put this all together very similarly to before, same colour coding on the left there. The writers convey completely different attitudes about their hotel stays. In source A, Duffy presents an approving, complimentary and impressed attitude following his stay. The repetition of the adjective excellent, as well as a list of 3 clean, tidy and spacious, suggests that he was happy with the level of service he received by professional and organised staff. He is also impressed with the food and old-fashioned interiors. The metaphor tight ship reinforces Duffy's view that the hotel is run well, and the declarative we felt at home suggests he felt welcomed by the hotel's informal atmosphere. On the other hand, we've got our connective there. Lodge remains deeply critical, outraged and angry by the hotel, perhaps because she is a professional cleaner and is used to immaculate standards. She uses 2 similes, like a war zone, shower like gunfire, to convey how unclean and noisy the hotel was, with connotations of something being unsafe and violent, not relaxing at all. You could also say she's being a bit hyperbolic, maybe a bit exaggerated. She finishes her response by using the imperative, do not stay here, urging others to avoid the hotel at all costs because of its unsatisfactory facilities and pricing. You could also say, of course, that Natalie is a mother and she does not want her children getting ill because they are breathing in mould particles or whatever into their lungs. So that's another reason perhaps why she has the view she does. So again, you can see how all of these skills and components of this question begin to fit together. Really at the heart of your response are these red words, because that's summing up the attitude of the writers, and that's what you're comparing. So the aim of this video was to use some short extracts. You can practice this task perfectly well using shorter extracts. A good introduction perhaps to this question before you look at longer extracts. And again, just a reminder here of that 5-step process which you go around in a clockwise fashion in order to find all the information you need in order to be in a position to write a good response. So hopefully that was useful for paper 2, question 4.